Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, as Israel stands ready for an assault on the last Hamas stronghold in Rafah, America is applying pressure for a ceasefire with Hamas in exchange for hostages. This all comes as the International Criminal Court may bring charges of war crimes against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other top Israeli leaders. The question is, after the war with Hamas, could another war be on the way, this time with Hezbollah? We're going to bring you a first-hand look at the fighting along the border of northern Israel and Lebanon. Powerful tornadoes leaving a trail of destruction and death across the Midwestern United States. And now the cleanup is beginning. We're going to see how bad the devastation is. And we'll hear from a Levitical choir in Jerusalem's Old City, singing songs including from the Psalms to draw people closer to God. All those stories and more ahead today, right here on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Lots to get to. Let's begin in Israel as the military is prepared for a potential assault on the last Hamas stronghold in the city of Rafah in Gaza. But the U.S. is pressuring Israel to stand down for now and reach a deal with Hamas that would free some Israeli hostages, along with a temporary ceasefire. It comes as the International Criminal Court is reportedly preparing to charge Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders with war crimes. CBN's Dale Hurd is on the story.
President Biden has again told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the White House opposes Israel's planned invasion of the Gazan city of Rafah. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia for the first leg of a Mideast tour to lobby for a ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages in Gaza.
That's going to be right at the top of the list for Secretary Blinken, to keep pushing for this temporary ceasefire. We want it to last for about 6 weeks. It would allow for all those hostages to get out and, of course, to allow for easier aid access to places in Gaza, particularly up in the north.
The website Axios reports the Israeli government has proposed a possible hostage deal with Hamas that includes discussing an end to fighting in exchange for the hostages. Hamas reportedly has no objections to the deal and is sending a delegation to Cairo. While ending the war has been a key Hamas demand, right-wing party members of Israel's governing coalition have threatened to leave if it agrees to what they call a reckless deal. Today, Hamas took credit for launching about 20 rockets from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. The IDF says they were all intercepted. Thousands demonstrated in Tel Aviv Saturday demanding the release of the hostages and the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government after a Hamas propaganda video showed 2 Israeli hostages in captivity, 47-year-old Israeli Omri Miran and Israeli-American Keith Siegel, who said, "I want to tell my family that I love you very much." He then begins to weep during his message. In response, Siegel's family released a video with his wife, herself a former hostage who was released in November, saying, "Keith, I love you. We will fight until you return." 133 hostages remain in captivity after more than 200 days since the Hamas attack.
This is job number 1 of the government of Israel. Job number 1, and they failed dramatically. They should go. All the governments, all the 64 members.
Meanwhile, violent pro-Palestinian protests continue on college campuses across the U.S. Fighting broke out on the UCLA campus amid dueling demonstrations between pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protesters. UCLA officials say a barrier between the groups was breached, leading to brawls between the two sides.
We would like very much for them to understand and to learn about the history of Israel. I believe that many of these young people have no idea. They just come because they follow someone, but they don't know what is going on.
On the diplomatic front, Israeli media reports the U.S. is trying to prevent the International Criminal Court from issuing arrest warrants against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials for alleged war crimes. Netanyahu posted on X, "Under my leadership, Israel will never accept any attempt by the ICC to undermine its inherent right of self-defense." The charges against Israeli officials would be for allegedly preventing the delivery of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip and their military's aggressive response to the October 7th Hamas terror attack. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Continuing now in the Middle East, while talks are underway for a ceasefire in Gaza, Hezbollah is still firing missiles into northern Israel from Lebanon, and Israel has been striking back. And some believe a larger war between the two forces is just a matter of time. CBN's Chris Mitchell recently visited the northern Israel town of Kiryat Shmona for a first-hand look.
Recently, a Hezbollah rocket hit the building where Valentina and Valery Shevtsov live in Kiryat Shmona.
The home shook.
We heard a loud explosion, but we did not expect it to be our building.
Kiryat Shmona's mayor explained these rockets hit indiscriminately throughout the city.
There were 22 hits that were direct hits of residential buildings that were a total loss. And the peripheral damage is even bigger. We have 4 kindergartens, 3 daycares, and 2 schools that were hit.
This is Kiryat Shmona, one of the largest towns along the Israeli-Lebanese border. The border of Lebanon is about 6 miles away. Most of the people have evacuated this city. Some of the more than 80,000 Israelis that have evacuated along the Israeli-Lebanese border.
Imagine Florida. You will accept 80,000 people will go because, I don't know, Mexico is shooting on you or Cuba. Which country accept that?
Overlooking the Syrian border near Lebanon, Reserve IDF Colonel Marco Moreno explains why he believes war with Hezbollah is the only way out of a situation Israel can't endure.
My suggestion is strategic, like in strategic level, we don't care what they think. We don't care how they think. We need to do the job. It's our interest as a country. Guys, listen, it's crazy. Think about it. 80,000 people evacuated from their home in the north.
Moreno calls it a fight for Israel's survival.
This is the independent war. If we don't do it right, we are lost. All the neighbors are looking at us, all the Muslims are saying, let's see how the Israelis will react. If we don't say, let's go crazy here, it's done for us.
Meanwhile, the rumbling of war continues between Israel and Hezbollah. U.S. mediators like Amos Hochstein are seeking a diplomatic solution by trying to convince Hezbollah to pull its forces away from the border. Despite these efforts, Moreno still sees war as inevitable.
And a war will start in the north. Don't let anyone tell you stories. There's going to be a war in the north. It will happen and give you the signs for it. Once you see the volume is down in Gaza, when you see the volume is down, meaning the army is not, very busy there, which means it's going up. All the good troops, like 98 that is now deployed in Gaza, will go up.
Moreno adds that resupplying weaponry and the weather are also important factors.
In the meanwhile, we are getting from our American brothers all we need for the Iron Dome and for Air Force. And the weather will be better because of the tanks and. I'm assuming around May, maybe after Passover.
As for the many empty homes in Kiryat Shmona, only about 3,000 people remain, including Yehuda Elbilia.
There's no option. I need to work. I need to make a living. No one else will come here and work instead of us. It doesn't mean that if Nasrallah shells us, we shouldn't stop working. This is the situation here at the moment. And, God willing, I hope all residents will come back here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Kiryat Shmona, Israel.
Here in the United States, devastating tornadoes causing widespread destruction in multiple states over the weekend, destroying homes and buildings and killing at least 5 people, including an infant. We're going to bring you a look at the impact of these powerful storms when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning, the CBN News Quick Start Podcast. Each weekday morning at 7 a.m., get quick highlights of the day's important news. Then an in-depth analysis that goes beyond the headlines. Insights that matter to people of faith. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Find the CBN News Quick Start podcast on iTunes or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts, because truth matters.
Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Small towns in Oklahoma have begun a long cleanup after tornadoes devastated parts of the state. The storms were part of a destructive and deadly outbreak of severe weather across multiple states throughout the middle of the U.S. over the weekend. CBN's Lori Johnson is on this story.
More than 130 tornadoes tore a path of destruction from Texas all the way to the Great Lakes states. The multi-day event left at least 5 people dead, 4 of them including an infant in Oklahoma. The town of Sulphur was flattened by an EF3 twister, packing winds of up to 165 miles an hour.
I just haven't seen this much destruction from my time as governor. It seems like every business in downtown has been destroyed now.
In Iowa, at least one person died after more than 10 reported tornadoes ravaged that state, ripping the roofs and walls off more than 100 structures, scattering debris for miles.
You see this right here? This was where our house was.
In Texas, the town of Trinity, north of Houston, was slammed by an overnight tornado. 2 people were rushed to the hospital when their home collapsed. Nebraska was one of the hardest hit states. The National Weather Service in Omaha issued 48 tornado warnings Friday, the most ever issued in a single day. Thankfully, no deaths were reported.
Should we get away from the windows?
A freight train in rural Nebraska took a direct hit. The 2 conductors had nowhere to hide.
Right over us.
CBN's Operation Blessing is already on the ground in Elkhorn, Nebraska, near Omaha, a town nearly wiped out by a tornado. Volunteer teams come alongside to comfort and pray with victims and help them pick up the pieces.
All the people who've come to help, it's just overwhelming.
Operation Blessing volunteers cleaned the debris on Joe Zelfeld's property and made progress on the frame for a new shelter for his family's animals.
It's God's will. I don't know why. There's no explaining why, but it kind of gets me excited to see what he has planned for us next.
Working with local churches and civic leaders, Operation Blessing bringing practical help and compassion to this hard-hit community as it begins to rebuild. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, it's the hub for a whopping 70% of the world's internet traffic. And it's the place where your personal information is being stored. We're going to take you inside a massive digital data center just a few miles from the capital of the United States. We've got the story for you right after this. Every time we send a text or take a picture on our cell phones, that information goes to a data center where it is being stored. And with the online industry growing at an exponential rate, the size and number of these facilities are rapidly increasing. As CBN's Caitlin Burke shows us, they're also putting a strain on area communities.
This part of Northern Virginia is known as Data Center Alley. Stretching across Loudoun and Fairfax counties, these buildings full of servers route 70% of the world's internet traffic.
When you talk about something happening online or happening in the cloud, what you're talking about is something that's actually happening that's powered by a physical data center. It's actually a building.
The average American household has at least 22 devices connected to the internet. They've expanded from phones and computers to smart TVs, lights, and appliances. Our digital society creates so much data that massive storage facilities like these are now needed to process and house it all.
Rather than have each individual business or individual internet user have their own server for their data, a data center aggregates all of our collective computing needs in one facility. And by doing so, the facility is more secure, more reliable, more efficient.
While data centers provide a critical service, they also require a tremendous amount of electricity.
It is not uncommon for a data center to require as much power as, let's say, 25,000 homes.
Affordable and reliable power helped draw these facilities to Virginia. Their predicted growth, however, is raising concern we could reach a point when utilities and even the power grid itself won't be able to keep up.
Think of the last 5 years, basically the power demand from data centers in our service territory doubled. And looking forward over the next 15 years, we projected that power demand from data centers is likely to quadruple, nearly quadruple from what it is today.
Dominion Power spokesman Aaron Ruby wants to assure Virginia residents plans are in place to deal with this growing need.
If power demand is going to nearly double over 15 years, then that means we need to nearly double our power supply over the next 15 years, which means we need to build a significant amount of new power plants. Additionally, we need to build a significant amount of new power lines, transmission lines, distribution lines, substations, to be able to deliver nearly twice as much electricity to our customers.
Ruby says Dominion's plan for the future relies on a mix of energy sources, and 95% of them will be carbon-free. That includes the country's largest offshore wind project, the second largest solar fleet, expanding battery storage, and exploring next-generation nuclear power. Only 5% of new energy will come from natural gas. Still, these major grid updates cost money, and some of Dominion's residential customers don't want to pay this industry's power bill.
The truth is that if you remove the data center industry, Virginia is not experiencing this explosive kind of transmission need, this need for new generation.
Elena Schlossberg with the Coalition to Protect Prince William County points out that while data centers pay for their power use, taxpayers are on the hook for financing the new infrastructure.
All of us, the residents, are covering the cost of these massive transmission lines, and at some point we're going to need to build all the generation. What is happening in Virginia is not normal.
Schlossberg worries that being the data center capital of the world will eventually destroy her state.
These don't belong near homes, they don't belong near national parks, and they certainly don't belong in your drinking water supply watersheds. Something has to change.
For example, a lawsuit is underway against a complex planned across from Manassas National Battlefield Park. Dubbed the Digital Gateway, many area property owners have agreed to sell rather than live next door to such a massive industrial development.
Data centers are destroying communities. They are taking too much electricity, too much fossil fuel, too much water, and too much land. And at some point, we all have to be a part of that conversation because we're sacrificing the real world for the digital world.
When asked about the cost for the planned grid updates, Dominion spokesperson responded that customers' monthly power bills will only go up by 3% per year, a rate lower than historic inflation. And Ruby adds the largest cost increase isn't due to data center growth.
The vast majority of those costs are due to the clean energy transition that we're undertaking in Virginia.
Meanwhile, John Huckel with the Data Center Coalition says they're always looking for ways to be more efficient.
So this is going to be an industry that's with us for a long time. And so data centers want to be good neighbors. They want to be engaged in the communities that they're part of.
While these experts say it's easy to point the finger at the data center industry, consumers continue to drive its explosive growth. And it will only get bigger as research predicts data demand globally in 2030 will be 10 times what it was at the start of the decade. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, from Loudoun County's Data Center Alley.
Coming up, a unique choir singing during Passover in Israel in a move to bring people closer to God. We're going to bring you that story from the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem's Old City when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Hi, I'm John Stolnis, host of the CBN News podcast, DC Debrief. I'd love for you to join me each Friday morning for the inside scoop on Washington politics. We will talk to experts, lawmakers, newsmakers, and analysts to help us take a deep dive into the important stories you might not hear anywhere else. Don't miss this unique CBN News perspective coming to you straight from the nation's capital, because truth matters.
A unique Jewish choir sang psalms in Jerusalem's Jewish quarter over Passover to draw people closer to God. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us that story.
This choir's songs look forward to the day when the Jewish temple will be rebuilt. The Levitical Choir is part of the Temple Institute, which focuses on the Third Temple's establishment, and all the choir members are from the tribe of Levi.
The lyrics are from the time of the temple, and the melodies are some of them new, some of them more ancient music.
There are about 30 members, and choir director Itzik Weiss says most of the music is from Psalms.
The purpose is to establish a choir that we will finally sing all the songs that we're singing in the Bet Mikdash, in the temple.
Weiss tells CBN News they are composing new songs like it says in Psalm 96, sing a new song to the Lord. He says many people are uncomfortable these days with the idea of killing animals to sacrifice in a rebuilt temple, and it doesn't resonate with them. But music is different.
Singing and music is something that everyone can communicate. So our thought was that there's something that everyone agrees that music does good to people and make them to connect spiritually.
And even at this time of war, the goal is the same.
We're trying to make people feel good. That's the only thing we want.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Jewish Quarter, Jerusalem's Old City.
Time now for your Monday motivation. I want to leave you with this thought for the day. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, but he isn't always moving the same as he did yesterday, today, and forever. Stay close to him, spend time with him, and you will know him in new ways, yesterday, today, and forever. With that word, make this a marvelous Monday, and be sure to have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. You can find them in both places at any time. Take a moment. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. We look forward to seeing you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.